How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to today's briefing. We are going to talk today about the oil markets, the insanity that's been occurring in the oil markets, how it can come about, what it really means, and how we can explain it to clients, how we can sell it to clients. This chart that you're looking at here is an hourly chart of West Texas Intermediary. That's the product that the U.S. market is benchmarks off of. Now, um, it has reached, as you can see here, prices nearly below $40 minus. What the hell is a minus price? For most of us, that in itself is a hard thing to understand. So let's talk about that first, Bichlal. Um, the retail people who sell things, sellers of goods, commodities, what have you, will often discount to the price of zero or below zero, but you don't know it. In other words, when you go into a store and they've got too much Tide or too many pink striped shirts, they will complicate the price in such a way as to basically pay you to take it, but they don't want to admit that they're in that desperate shape. They tell you buy three, get two for free, buy two, get a membership, you have a lifestyle, all that usual nonsense. But all that is a guise to disguise the pricing. In the commodities markets, they're not so. Well, first of all, this is an unprecedented event in history. You should know, oil has been trading as a commodity for 166 years since 1854, when it was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania. And by the way, the lowest price for oil ever was recorded in sometime in late 1880s at 10 cents a barrel. But we're going to see. So we have seen already. We've seen negative prices, but that's an anomaly. Let me get to that in a moment. How we can go to minus 40. But the idea of sellers paying buyers to take things is hardly new. It's well known, and you just don't see it because they throw dust in your eyes. It's like when you buy one of those, cell phone contracts. The contracts just stick. They just try to confuse you. So you'll just say, "Okay, let me out of here. I'm done. I'll sign whatever you want me to. Just enough." Well, the case in the United States is such that they don't have. It's a pipeline business or rail, but oil is entered into the system. If you're long oil and you sold it into the market, you either transport it by rail to a pipeline head, or you transport it to a Gulf port, again into the pipeline system, which all ends up in Cushing, Oklahoma, which I advise anybody who's interested to look up on Google Maps. It's a tiny little town in the right dead center in the middle of Oklahoma, surrounded by tank farms. Hundreds of these giant above ground tanks sit there, and that absorbs the oil that comes and goes from the drillers into the storage system, and then down into the refinery network and out into distribution into the broader retail market and wholesale market for refined products. Now, there are two major fundamentals affecting oil at the moment. Let me just see where we are. They only have 15 minutes in this, and I don't want to go too longer. It's the free version. And one of them, of course, is the COVID. The COVID-19 has dropped crude sales by 20% worldwide, and it's an easy numbers are easy in this market right now because 100% is about 100 million barrels a day, and so 20% is 20. You don't have to, you don't need your pocket calculator to work these numbers. Um, the OPEC Plus agreement, and I use that term agreement in quotation marks, did indeed reduce allegedly supply to by 10 million barrels a day. So even by the standards of how much the demand has fallen due to the COVID virus, they're still oversupplying by 10 million barrels a day. Added to the fact that there has been a huge oil inventory overhang for years in the market, and furthermore that the above ground storage facility in the United States is generally not that large compared to daily flows. It was estimated in late 2019 by the Energy Information Administration, a government body, U.S. government body, that there were about 76 million barrels capacity in Cushing. Cushing is the main hub, the oil storage hub for the nation, the North American-wide crude network. Now, unlike Brent, which is shipped, every drop of Brent that's pumped out of the Gulf goes into a ship. Although there are a few pipelines, but they pale in comparison to the quantity of crude that's carried by these tankers. A very large crude carrier is 100 million barrels. Ultra large crude carrier, 100 million. I meant 1 million barrels. An ultra large crude carrier can be anywhere between 2 and 3 million barrels. And these things leave the Persian Gulf on an order of magnitude around between 10 and 15 a day. A day. That's, 20, 35 million, tens of millions of barrels. Now, that stuff, while it's ultimately destined for, Kobe or Rotterdam, the major oil ports, Singapore, Shanghai, much of it is borne on ships at any given time. If the Gulf is dispatching, let's say, 20 of these ships every day, there's 60. What is it? 20 times 30 is 600 of these ships floating around all over the world, and there's more, by the way, in reserve. So they can afford to lay anchor and wait outside Rotterdam. And it's another Google Earth picture I'd advise you to take a look at. Take a look at Rotterdam. Take a look at Galveston, the two major oil ports in the Western world. You could also take a look at Yasakuto or Shanghai or any of the major Asian ports, and you'll see ships backed up, at anchor, doing nothing. Now, I don't want to get into the arcane economics of tanker shipping prices, but suffice it to say they're going through the roof. Shipping rates that were $18,000 a day 2 months ago are now selling at $115,000 a day. That's how rare these tankers are, because they're all laid up as storage facilities. Now, in the case of the United States, where you don't have that storage facility option, you have to get rid of it, because the oil contract, the West Texas Intermediary contract, unlike the Brent contract, settles in physicals. In other words, if you're holding a contract to sell, you have to sell 15,000 barrels because you're holding a contract to receive it. That's going to deliver in physical. You don't want that. You can't. It's very expensive. You're not unless you're in the business, which most speculators are not. They have to sell it at any price, because the $40 a negative barrel I'm paying you to take it off my hands far under exceeds the cost that I would have to undertake, and God knows how I would do it, to store the stuff. So I'm going to unload it, and that's how you get a negative $40 price. Now, there's another feature of what's going on in the futures market. The futures expires today. I don't want to go into that. That's a subject that Shachar could deal with at a great extent. But suffice it to say that this negative price, it's already resolved. It's back up here at 15, which is an unbelievable handle in itself. But that's the June contract that's now in force. You can see the volume. As the volume drops off here, the volume picks up. After it drops off, this is now where the volume is in the front contract. And so we're not going to see any weirdo anomalies like negative prices anytime soon. I don't think, but anything's possible in this market. Now, if that weren't bad enough, the supply situation, the coronavirus depressing supply and there being no storage in WTI, and Brent, by the way, too, is falling. Just to give you a little bit of, what is USD BRL. Brent's also falling precipitously as well. Now, it's got a $20 handle, and it's probably going to go down to a $19 handle soon. And so the differential, first of all, the spread is now $3. Brent is falling actually faster than WTI. Well, now it is, beside that Carnival sideshow, a little display of weirdness yesterday. Brent is also trailing, largely following crude, West Texas. If that weren't bad enough, the fact that demand is down by 20% for fuel, and about 60% of fuel consumption goes into kerosene, about 80% of it goes into transport fuels, but 60% of that 80% is kerosene, jet fuel. Demand for that is down well over 70%. Airlines are shutting down wholesale. Many of them are going to go bust by the time this is over, and that's a story for another discussion. What to look for when this thing turns around, but it's a little early for that. There's a price war going on, and the price war would be enough to have wrecked price as it is. So the price war, coupled with the COVID-19, you have a disaster in oil. And let me just touch. I have about 8 minutes left, 6 minutes left. The Bin Salman Inc., aka Saudi Aramco, formerly known as OPEC Plus, and the reason I say formerly known as, they had this agreement that they closed April 12th. That here I'll show you exactly where that is on this chart. Here it is. They closed it here. The deal obviously had no effect whatsoever in terms of reducing production and raising price. In fact, well, first of all, it only comes into force today. Second of all, the pipeline, as I mentioned, is 300 tankers at sea at the moment. So until that inventory clears, no real production cuts going to even be seen or take place, let alone felt. The Saudis are now out openly because they said they were going to, OPEC as a whole was going to cut production by 10 million barrels. What has happened is they're pumping like crazy. The Russians, the deal isn't holding. It's not being abided to, and the Saudis are now out openly in an undeclared war to dominate the oil production industry, and they're going to do that by seeing price fall so far that the weak hands will be squeezed out. There'll be a great deal of consolidation. The Saudis will be able to take over supply contracts that these now bankrupt drillers and suppliers can no longer supply for pennies on the dollar or centime on the euro. Supply them themselves, and over time they'll supply them at a higher price than they're getting now. While the others are all down and out and will take years to get back on their feet. These are not, remember, oil drilling, oil exploration. All this is not stuff that you just, hello, buy, London, buy, Hong Kong, sell. It doesn't work that way. It's much more complicated. And we could even get to the point where refineries close, and that closure process is a month to close and 2 months to reopen. So there's huge problems with this oversupply business, but. Bin Salman is very serious. He's a very steely-eyed card player. He's got very deep pockets, and he's ruthless. He's absolutely ruthless. If you need any proof for that, just see the Khashoggi file. This guy lets nothing stand in his way. Or take a look at the 400 whales that were locked up when he took power a year and a half ago. Yes, and one final point about how ruthless he can and will be. His bag also has one tool that nobody else has. Aramco makes money at $3.51 a barrel. Not much, of course, but who else can stay in the game that long? The guy has more chips. He's got a strong hand, and he has nerves of steel. So price is going to fall a lot more before it bottoms out. So that's the oil picture. We have just a few more minutes before I end off. I just want to make a brief point about the earnings report season. We are in the earnings report season, but the usual rules do not adhere. The usual protocol is if the earnings report is positive and the stock price has been positive during the last quarter for which the report is expected to come out and comes out in that same direction, the stock is going to likely take a pop up, and vice versa. Stock price up the last quarter, earnings report negative, or earnings report positive, and it comes out negative, stock price is down. And also, even if the stock price is down and the earnings report is expected to be down, and it comes out down, it still goes down. So it's fairly intuitive, obvious, simple affair, and that's one of the reasons it's so popular. Those guidelines do not adhere because some of these reports won't take into consideration, due to accounting anomalies, the actual picture in the first quarter. The second quarter will be, but by then the boom will have long been lowered. The sell-off in stocks will have continued much further by the next quarter, and so prices and valuations and PE ratios will be vastly different. But my point is this. If you're only looking for things that are going up, you're making a mistake. You've got to look for things that are falling because they're falling rapidly and strongly, and they're not done falling. So you want to talk to your people about selling and selling short. And if you want to, if you want, we'll make a quick video about that. But we have that ability, and you should sell it, and that's one of our strong points. I'm going to sign off here, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.